All right, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our third Bitcoin Treasury Spaces. Again, going to be doing these daily. Got another great round of content for you. Probably got to start a little bit with acknowledging all that's going on in the federal government right now, overshadowing the Bitcoin Treasuries temporarily. A lot of news coming out this morning from about the White House Bitcoin and crypto report. So expect to see that news coming out over the course of today. But the big headline, no strategic reserve update. That's according to Bloomberg and Coindesk, who have apparently looked at a fact sheet related to the release. We're told that there's going to be a press briefing at 11 p.m., followed by a public meeting at 2 p.m. Markets reacting pretty negatively to that, as you would expect, though the Bitcoin treasury companies are holding strong. Going through some of the top names today. Mara Holdings up a little bit. Obviously, having the big fundraise, going to go over 50,000 Bitcoin and keep growing. Tesla down a little bit. MicroStrategy down 2%. Block down 3%. So seems like a little bit of a down day so far. If you missed our spaces yesterday, we had Pierre Rochard of the Bitcoin Bond Company come and talk to us. First space on Monday was with Will Reeves from Fold. Today, we've got brother John, or John Fakhoury. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, so I went with it. He's going to talk to us about what he's doing, bringing a really exciting private market company to a Bitcoin standard, and I'm not sure how much he can say about what's going on there. But John, you may remember him from Clubhouse. Welcome back, John. How are you doing?
Good man, you crushed the name pronunciation, dude. You did well.
Did I? Did I really?
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
usually just I try to make a go. I just boulder into it.
I think if you go a little longer, I can sound like an Italian suit designer, like Faccati, like one of
Ah,
those. But
there you go.
anyway,
Yeah. Well,
no,
I've
no.
got Rizzo as well. Rizzo. Nobody pronounces that right, but Fakori. Yeah, I can do the
Here,
little.
here we are. No, man, it's not Italian, but man, it would have been helpful, as a young man at the bars, man. John wasn't the easiest name to come across, but yeah, dude, I don't know. I can say anything. I'm private. I can just tell you
Yep,
whatever I want. I
you're a
have no
private
public
company.
disclosures. Yeah.
You're not obligated. You can just thrill everyone here. And just a quick reminder: it's Stacking Sats. That's John's company, Stacking Sats Inc. CEO. He is on Bitcoin Treasuries now, listed as of a few days ago. You can go to the private companies tab, and you'll see, yeah, private companies are adding Bitcoin to their treasuries, as we would expect, as the Bitcoin standard rolls out. Where do we want to start, John? You want to briefly talk
Well,
about the strategic reserve,
yeah,
or
I was gonna say you just broke the news to me. I've been in meetings since like 7 a.m. this morning, and I actually haven't caught up with the news. Although
yeah,
I will say I'm not like shocked. And I have like an overall position where I am totally fine with strategic Bitcoin reserve coming much later. Like I don't know. I'm not gonna be like one of the I don't know, like hardcore maximalists that's like, oh, you guys are now cucked and IBIT is like, like it's not where I'm going with this. But I do prefer that we have more Bitcoin in American citizen hands than American government hands. And to me, that would be um, a much more fruitful and would lead to a much more strong country than this the American government holding it, especially considering that I want to be as polite as I can be here, but I also
well,
want to
feel
be
free.
honest.
We're a
Well, I mean,
business audience,
I
but we
just
still
don't.
have
I don't.
Bitcoin roots.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't trust, I don't trust the idiots in Congress to ultimately not fumble the bag and screw this up. And so, in short, like I just much rather a bunch of Americans hold Bitcoin than the American government. But that's just my fault. I do think eventually this will happen, and I mean, eventually, whatever they seize, they'll keep. I think that's already happening. But I'm really behind on the news, so I don't want to be the guy leading this particular discussion. But I
Yeah,
listen,
I
I
just
just
thought it was
prefer
a
that.
brief
Yeah.
mention, right? I think that one of the big questions around the Bitcoin Treasury company opportunity, right? And maybe we can kind of go into this. And obviously, you've been looking at this market, helming a company and trying to kind of take it through the motions. But it does seem like there's, this idea, and I would say it's, a bit dismissively in the sort of, Bitcoin and crypto space as a whole, that, they shouldn't really take the Bitcoin treasury companies too seriously because all this regulation is going to come. Oh, and it's going to be so easy to own your digital assets and own your exotic cryptos, and therefore this digital Bitcoin treasury company, they sort of view it as this a loophole, sort of a gimmick. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably a silly take on some level, right? I mean, like I do think that there are real um, pockets of demand that struggle to find, ways to get exposure to Bitcoin. I do think that there is a good amount of that, but I, I also think that there's a good amount of shit coining too, man. Like nobody knows what the hell Coincilium was. They just bought a ticker. They didn't know that they had like 10,000 pounds in revenue and declining revenue. No one's looking at the 10K. So I do think that there has been a lot of shitcoin sort of like instincts and just buying random stuff that people don't know. It's not like they sat there and did the work on Strive or, it's not like they did the work on, I don't know, pick random ticker in
Yeah, there's a lot
Canada.
of the Bitcoin influencers, said companies. There's a lot of that happening. But I think Adam
And
back.
I don't think it dismisses the underlying thing, right? Like MicroStrategy has also proven a case that that there's a demand for ultimately this sort of product. And now you have, you went from sort of ice cream, let's just call it MicroStrategy, to now like Baskin Robbins, where you got like a whole slew of flavors. But I do think that there is a few things that are emerging, and obviously I'm a little biased to this, but I saw Saylor was doing his interview with Burnett over at Semler like a week or two ago, and he's just mentioning, like step one, make sure the operating company's not hemorrhaging cash. I'm like, operating
I
company,
like this term operating company because it just means like a company that's like profitable, right? Like it just
yeah,
like I don't know.
or that
It
there's
honestly took me several spaces to be like I was like operating company. Like is that like what is that? Like you know what I mean? It sounds like very exotic,
it's
and
like
I
saying
figured it
human
out. Yeah.
person. It's like saying human person, But the thing is, the
Right.
distinction sort of needs to be made in my mind because, you're looking at a number of different shells that are just that. There's zombie companies, there's no operation there. Like you're seeing charts that reflect that, right? Like, I'm picking on Coincilium,
Yeah.
but I own it. Just like most of these other shit coins, I own them, I promise. But the consideration is that I don't think that if you look at the chart, it goes up from like 5 cents to like $1 or something like that, $1.20, and then it round trips back to 8 cents. And it's like, wait, this looks like 2017, and I think Coincilium isn't a good company. I'm sorry. It's just like I wouldn't look at it on its own like sort of operation and be like, oh yeah, this is a great company. It's declining revenues. It's I know I'm doing really great pumping my own bags here, Pete, but has declining revenues, right? Like their profits are declining. I don't even know exactly what the business is, where it's headed. The leadership doesn't seem to have any like articulable vision outside of buying Bitcoin, which kudos to them for doing so. But ultimately, like I just like I don't understand how things will exist 5 years from now if you're just buying Bitcoin, you're just relying on NGU. I talked a little bit about this during our introductory spaces, but like to me, there's four different ways that like people are attacking this market. Some of them are more sustainable than others. And the first is like sort of this tax arbitrage that like Metaplanet has sort of enacted.
Yeah.
All
They've
right.
got a number of arbitrages that to be fair,
Yeah,
but
that's fair too. And I think there like there's also sort of like this GBTC like play where there's pockets of money that don't necessarily mean tax per se, but there's just like money that has nowhere else to escape. And so for a lot of you guys, if you were here back in like 17, 18, someone check my math on or check my dates, but we ran up to like a 40% GBTC premium. And it was mostly driven, some of it was driven by a contango, and people were borrowing money from BlockFi outrageous rates and then going and doing the ARB on GBTC. But really, the reason why that premium ran up is because people wanted exposure to Bitcoin in certain accounts, especially retirement accounts in the US. And there was no other way to get Bitcoin in your retirement account back then. So you just bought GBTC. And then later, obviously MSTR came online before that. You mentioned Mara. I'm pretty sure Riot was available back then too, or
yeah, I'm
starting
keen
to
to
become.
get a. I think a lot of people in the space might will remember you from your clubhouse days as sort of a fiery preacher, for self custody and for Bitcoin fundamentals, right? So I am curious. Maybe you can give a background to the folks in here, who maybe remember that you in that time period. And I remember Sunday service, every
Well, all right.
Sunday.
Well, we
And
can do that too. Yeah. So
how
like,
do you get to like? So when did it click for you that the treasury model was something that you wanted to dive into? Like, what was that? What was
well,
that
we've
like?
been buying Bitcoin since 2021, right? And like, if you really think about, only thing that we're doing different now is just taking a small amount, like a healthy amount of leverage. And we've described this in our model, taking leverage that allows for us to cover the debt 1.5 to 2 times. And then the other thing that we're doing is we're
And this
issuing equity.
the you here is the Framework IT company that you've been a part of
Yeah, so
for. Okay.
Framework IT, yeah. So Framework IT more specifically is the operating company. Stacking Sats is a hold co that we just basically layered on top for strategic reasons, fundraising reasons, and ultimately our ambition to go public. But yeah, so the underlying company is just an IT company. It's actually boring as can possibly be. It's IT, cybersecurity, cloud infrastructure, voice and unified communications. But like we've been buying Bitcoin since 2021, and holding it on the balance sheet. And so really, like in my mind, like that was the original treasury model, right? Like what's happened is Sailor, I think has sort of opened up a new investor class, right? By saying, hey, borrow shit dollars and buy pristine Bitcoin at absurdly low interest rates. And so like to me, that's the only thing that we're doing differently. Like we've absorbed and sort of have become a Bitcoin company for quite some time now, and now we're just taking a little bit, kind of putting our foot on the gas pedal a little bit more. But I don't know, in terms of like sort of the Sunday Satoshi service thing, it was just like, I don't know. I think this toxicity within like Bitcoin maximalism has sort of waned a little bit. But like when we came out of the bear run in 2020, and we started to go into the bull of like 2020, 2021, there was a lot of pissed off people that were like, look, I'm right. Damn it. After going through 2 years or 2.5 years of a bear market. And so, Tina, some of you guys might know Bitcoin Tina, American Hodl. It was a whole cast of characters. NVK was there. I mean, it was just, I'm trying to remember everybody, but a lot of familiar faces for those that have been around for a while. And man, dude, they were just chomping people's heads off if they came in and were like, hey, man, so I bought this Bitcoin stuff and yeah, it's like Bitcoin Cash, right? Like that's Bitcoin, right? And they were like, oh, like fill in the blanks, right? Like you effing idiot and you dummy and this, that, and the other. And so I finally was like, yo, chill, man. That guy just got scammed. We need to help that person. And so there was just one day where Tina was just yelling way too much on a particular Sunday. And I just like changed the room. I created a new room and I was just like, man, we need to chill out here and kind of create a more of a woosah moment. And I just titled the room Sunday Satoshi Service. And then people just started coming in, bro. And they were just like coming in and people were like confessing their shit coining, and people had like sort of these like Satoshi prayers that were sort of written. And then it just started to grow. And then we started to do it every week. And before you knew it, people were coming on as like guest preachers, and people were dumping their ETH bags for Bitcoin. And people were like the most toxic Bitcoiners, maximalists were just, chilling out on a Sunday and actually helping people. Like come Monday, they would rip their heads off again. And so it was just like, it was an organic thing. It was just like a meme. But then we realized that, hey, man, this actually has some like legs, and there's a lot of potential to do some like educational, sort of just guidance and sort of a safer place to get that done. And so, yeah, man, before long, I started to show up to conferences, and without like telling like my girlfriend or my fiance at the time, I was like, yeah, Father John, it's nice to meet you. And she's like, Father John, who's this Father John guy? Why is everyone calling you Father John? And so that was an awkward sort of experience, when I had to reveal to my very Catholic mother that I started a church that had nothing to do with someone she believed in. So, yeah, man, that's a little bit of the background, and it was funny, and it sort of played its gamut, but it actually had a pretty cool educational sort of footprint. So, yeah, man, how that led to this, I have no idea. They're sort of independent. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
like,
I just think like people are, there's this idea that, it just took so long for people to catch on to this idea that, you would want to be a public company. So I know with Forward IT, you're a private company right now, you're stacking sats on bitcointreasuries.net. That's the company you're gonna spin into. So like, I guess when did it click for you that because Sailor's 4 years ahead, right? He's out there in 2020, and he gets this idea. And so with your company, why seek the public markets, right? I guess, like, you're a profitable private business. Like, why try
Actually,
to kind of.
Sailor's the one that convinced me. He's like, wait, you have a good business? And I was like, yeah. He's like, it's profitable. I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, don't go public yet. I was like, okay. So I went to Vegas to try to figure out how to go public because everyone was going public without a company. I was like, wait, we can go public. We actually have like this thing called an operating company, and we have revenue, and we're profitable. It's crazy. And so anyway, started to talk to Sailor about it, and started to talk to his advisors. Um,
Well, was his advice really that simple? It was, you have a
well,
profitable
at
business.
first, well, it was a little bit more than that. I'm being a little bit facetious, but the take was right. Like generally, he was like, "Hey, listen, there's going to be 700 Bitcoin operating or big leverage Bitcoin entities by this time next year." And so far, he seems to be right. There seem to be two or three coming on every day, right? Um, and to me, what immediately clicked in my head is like, wait a second, 700 of these companies are not going to survive. There's not 700 winners in any industry. And so immediately, what I realized is, hey, what's happening here, and how do we differentiate and compete if we're going to go do this? And so, what I realized, and I was talking to Eric Weiss as part of this conversation too, and a sailor sort of gives a keynote about, in his 21 ways to wealth, he actually talks about, hey, if you have a business, then this is what you should do, even if you're not a public business, right? And so we basically went behind there, after sailor's keynote, after talking to Eric a little bit, and talking to some of the bankers that were working on the NACA deal and some of these other pipes, and we basically realized, like, hey, let's actually not compete right now for capital. That's just chasing tickers, that has no actual alignment with what their business models are. No one's investing in the smarter web code because they think that they're good web designers. Like that's not what's happening here, right? And so what we decided to do is we were like, hey, we're going to actually make sure that the investors that come into our company are also going to understand exactly what we do, exactly what our plan is, and exactly how we intend to go to market. And we want them to be supportive of us. And we don't want them to just buy us because we're the latest ticker that they saw someone tweet about on Twitter. And so what we really did is we really decided that, hey, if we stay private for now, that gives us a lot of control over our destiny. We don't have to get sloshed around in these public markets. We're not necessarily being, bought because we're the latest or greatest ticker. So you're only invested in us if you actually believe in what we're doing. If you have to be an accredited investor for one, like you're not just something we can buy on the public markets and go into your Schwab account. So you really have to know what we're doing. And so, we have over 40 something investors at this point, in our private offering, and every one of them knows exactly what we're doing. Every one of them we've spoken to. Every one of them understands our plan. And so what I realized is that, it made sense for us to have investor alignment, before going public, and ultimately to continue to build the operating company, to look at opportunities to acquire some struggling companies that would expand our EBITDA, expand our cash flow, and allow for us to continue to take smart leverage and accumulate more Bitcoin. So I just realized, hey, we can be in control of how we do this if we stay private, and I can go public when it makes most sense. Right now, I feel like, and you're already seeing a softening without being too much more long-winded. Like, hey, wait, why am I buying this? Right, wait, what's this company actually do? Right, and I think
Mm.
in the first 30 days or so, post sort of Bitcoin Vegas conference, it was just, hey, if you can get a shell up and you can articulate a plan to raise money and buy Bitcoin, then you can accrete capital. But there's just I think it's a couple months later, it's already becoming more fiercely competitive for that capital. And I think the need to differentiate and show sustainability is already becoming clear. And if I'm wrong, then I don't think that these, every one of these things would be down 60-70% from the top, right? And
Mm.
you wouldn't see
Well,
the
that
rotation.
shakeout, yeah, that shakeout's coming. So I'm looking at the leaderboard right now. Private companies, you guys are 25th on BitcoinTreasuries.net, just behind Jan 3, and a little bit behind Circle. So remarkably low 73 Bitcoin from Circle. So but the private market competition, isn't. We haven't really seen many companies be private companies and then do what you're doing in terms of trying to go public with that sort of Bitcoin story, right? And I guess how do you think through that, and like what metrics do you care about right now? We had a big long space with Pierre yesterday. He was talking to us about MNAV, Bitcoin per share, really talking about how to value a company. But at the end of the day, his answer was pretty much, you have to actually do corporate due diligence. There's no magic solution in any of these metrics. Are there metrics that you like? Are there metrics that you care about? Are you looking at your MNAV? Are you looking at your Bitcoin per share? Like what about this
I
do you
think
like?
I think all of that is fairly meaningless where we're sitting right now. Especially for us, right? Like we're not trading on open markets, sloshing around because Elon and Trump got into a fight on a Friday, or the White House released a report today. Like we own the Bitcoin that we own. We're driving a business that's going to continue to accumulate. So like I know this is going to sound really silly and like I'm being facetious, but the things that matter to us most are the things that should matter to any business. We're looking at our top line revenue growth. We're looking at our EBITDA margins. We're looking at opportunities to ultimately be more efficient so we can be more profitable. So like everyone's looking at financial alchemy, and I think that's fine and well. And I'm not like poo-pooing Saylor and what he's doing at all. In fact, it's what I'm trying to learn from and apply the best that I can, watching everyone else in the space. But for us, we're trying to run as healthy of an operation as we can. And that healthy operation is what ultimately allows for us to be buying Bitcoin now, and allows for us to be buying Bitcoin should we pull back. It allows for us to be buying Bitcoin when euphoria is high. It allows for us to be buying Bitcoin even at cheaper prices when everyone's fearful. And so, you know, I'm like super lucky, right? Like my two business partners, Adam, Barney, and Ross Dolce are also Bitcoiners. Like they didn't get like we weren't. Oh my God, we got to sell the position during the bear. We were still stacking. Like this was like we're undeterred, and we're literally our company is no different than most hodlers, right? Like we're just Bitcoiners, and so like for us, yeah. I mean, I think as we go public, we have a tracker up on our website, certainly to dive into these sorts of metrics, but none of those really matter for a private company in my mind. Like what matters is that we run a really really healthy company, we continue to grow it, and have business fundamentals that enable us to ultimately accumulate Bitcoin. In short, we just see ourselves as a Bitcoin engine, a Bitcoin producing engine, and that engine is just an IT company. Like that's what we do. And so for us to be able to continue to stack, for us to be able to continue to attract investors, for us to be able to continue to grow the stack, we have to just run a healthy company. I don't have to worry about the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Buying Bitcoin is not that difficult. Running really, really healthy companies is measurably more difficult. And I think what's going to happen is you'll see good companies thrive, and you'll see not good companies selling their stacks to companies that are thriving.
Yeah, well, another question from me. A reminder: you don't have to put up with my questions for very long. If you want a request to come up, please do so. We usually do about half of the spaces with my questions, and we kind of open it up to the floor. So if there's anybody who wants to ask about this public-private market transition, or just ask John any questions, feel free to throw your hand up. But yeah, I guess that was my other question: is given that there's so many companies ahead now, or I guess that have balance sheets, right? So say what you will about their operating business, they now have balance sheets. Did you consider getting acquired, or trying to be acquired by one of these companies? Because it seems like a lot of them, especially the ones with bigger Bitcoin balance sheets, I mean, they have to go out and acquire operating businesses like yours. So why do that versus why go public yourself?
Well, I would tell you that, I have a fiduciary duty to all investors to ultimately maximize shareholder value. And so, like, I look at all options at all time. I don't dismiss the opportunity or the position that we get acquired. In fact, I think that might be one of the biggest yields for our investors is that right now, the the balance of dollars that are going into companies that don't have anything substantial, that don't have anything real in terms of an operation, versus the amount of things that are being built, like real companies that are being built on a Bitcoin standard, is completely disproportional. That supply demand balance is completely out of whack. And I think what'll happen is that companies like ours, companies that hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet, that have navigated the custody, that have the strategy, that have the investor base that supports it, and that also have healthy companies that can churn profit and churn cash flow, and be buying Bitcoin, constantly. I think they're going to fetch a premium. I think if this is 100 billion, like if Naka is $100 billion company, and Strive is $100 million, or excuse me, 100 billion. And if I said million, I meant billion. If these are $100 billion entities, and they're and I don't know, pick another 10 tickers that are in similar size of, if this continues to proliferate, and they don't have operations. I do think that Bitcoin. David's already told you he's trying to build Bitcoin Hathaway. Simon's been public about wanting to issue equity to buy operating companies. Now, I think right now it's a difficult thing, right, to like divert dollars from buying Bitcoin to divert to going into buying, doing an acquisition. That's going to reduce Bitcoin per share, right? That's going to perhaps, depending on the investor, that might actually push them away. But I actually think we could fetch a healthy premium. I think it's entirely possible that we sell for 5 or 7x our MNAV, or at least the whatever equivalent in a private market would be seen. Just because I think to substantiate a multi-billion-dollar or multi-hundred-billion-dollar position in Bitcoin into the future, I don't think you can solely rely on just NGU. I think there is an escape velocity where you possibly can, and I think Saylor has proved that. But pretending that you're Michael Saylor, like just because you're copying his playbook, is almost as delusional as thinking that I'm Tiger Woods hitting a golf ball because I've watched him hit one. And I just don't think that, I was talking about earlier, there's like four ways to attack this market. There's like this tax arbitrage, there's this GBT arbitrage. My third bullet point is having a strong operating company. And then the fourth is being able to raise money in any environment. And again, I won't be too much more long-winded because that's not my strength. But Sailor struggled to raise money in the bear. Like if you look at his dot plot, he did not raise anywhere near the amount of money that he's raising right now.
Isn't that because, I mean, somebody was trying to give me a longer explanation about this, where essentially, like, because of the way that the company is structured, that he has to be buying the top, like that there's some sort of, I don't know, there was a much more eloquent explanation of this, but somebody said that, when Sailor says he's buying the top forever, it's he has to, because that's the only time he can get the investment from these larger capital allocators who in the bear market sort of just
Well,
become
I
this.
do think there's something to the vol argument. I don't think they're wrong, but here's the point: no matter the why, if Sailor's right and there's 700 of these right by next year, and we have even, I don't know, say we're at like 220 Bitcoin, and we pull all the way back to 175, right? Like that, I think that sentiment shift alone will wipe a number of people out. So like the why you can't raise the money doesn't change that you can't. And I don't think 700 companies are going to be able to go to the well and be able to. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think that they're going to be able to raise money in the way they are right now, or the way they've been able to raise in the last 60, 90 days. I think the euphoria will be much different. And I think there's going to be a lot of people in painful things. I mean, CoinCillion was in a little bit of trouble like right now, and they had to
You
raise a
love
little bit of
picking
money.
on these guys. I got to learn about them. Like, what's it's just because they're a Web3 advisory, just like
It's
sort
because
of
they're
kind of.
well, it's
Yeah,
because they're in my bag of you know of Bitcoin treasury shitcoins that's down 85%. And so I'm picking on them because they're ripping up my portfolio right now. But no, I mean,
So how did you? So what? So why did you? So I'm looking at them right now. Bitcoin
mm,
Treasuries. You bought the company. They've got 124 Bitcoin. Like what? What stuck out to you about this company? Or how'd you get in the bag?
nothing. There's nothing that stuck out to me. I was buying every ticker that came up on Twitter, just like everyone else, man. Like but no, I think there was a little bit from what I originally heard. And again, like the pace at which these things are moving is like impossible to have done the type of diligence that you need to do while building companies and this, that sort of thing. But I would say like the Smarter Webco and Coincilium seem to have been offering sort of a UK entry point, and finding ways that like they weren't able to get Bitcoin exposure. So I think they were mirroring a little bit of the meta planet arbitrage. But the larger point is like, to me that's just not enough, right? Like, and seems to be to the market that's not enough. Right, maybe it is when there's just GBTC like sort of around, and you're using them as a way to get in your retirement account exposure. But now we have ETFs, and now you got all these derivatives, and so when that competition comes into play, Is GBTC really that great of a vehicle? No, it was just the only girl at the bar that night, right? And that's ultimately what I think is happening here. But yeah, I mean, without picking on Coincilium any further, they're just, I think, they're no different than in my mind Matador, right? Matador pitched me on this idea for their private placement, and I asked them, I said, well, how do you guys, intend to like drive revenue and build a company and make this sustainable? And their pitch for revenue, I can't make this up, was they wanted to sell sheets of gold metal, inscribe art on it, and then put it on the Bitcoin ordinal, or what do you call it? Inscribe it on ordinals and put it on the Bitcoin blockchain, and that was going to be their revenue model. And like, I'm not gonna, again, I don't want to pick on Matador. Yeah, I like Sonny; he's a good dude, I guess. But that's crazy, Pete. Like, that's not a real company, right? Like, that's absolutely bonkers. And so,
I
like,
mean,
it's
it sounds
screaming.
like it's barely an Etsy store.
Yeah, and honestly, they've even abandoned that idea since. And I'm glad they told me that they were doing that. Otherwise, I would have given them money for their private placement, to be honest. But I was just like, "Are you serious? That's what your revenue model is?" And so, like, I think that was also sort of a trigger for me, or sort of a breaking point for me. It's just like, wait, wait, wait. There's just nothing being built here, or at least there's not much being built here. And so, like, I think if there's someone that can do it, like, why can't we do it? And so, we're like I said before, it just was like we're building something different, but are we? We're just building a regular company, and we're buying Bitcoin and trying to mirror as much as Michael Saylor as we can without blowing up the position. And so, like, I don't think what we're
Mm.
doing is that brilliant. I think what we're doing is super obvious. And I think the reason why we're doing it now more than anything else is that Michael Saylor's created this investor class. Like, people are now awake to it because he's done it. Before, it didn't make sense to do that. It didn't make sense. Like, the math wasn't clear, the idea wasn't proven. But now he has proven it. And so there are ways to glean. And I think, because I'll be frank, Pete, like, I'm kicking myself. I was just like, wait, dude, you could have been taking some cash flow leverage. You guys have been profitable for the last 5 years. It'd have been easy for you to probably accumulate, another 30, 40, 50, 60 Bitcoin. And
Yeah, it's
and the reason
amazing
why we
how many
didn't,
people
because he
didn't.
wasn't there.
Yeah, people didn't take it seriously. We had a couple people who bravely raised their hands. We had Jimi Hendrix, and then Connor. I'm not sure if anybody wants to ask a question, but now's a good time.
Yeah, I'll go. I mean, one, John, I agree with a bunch of what you said, especially at the beginning. Holding off on, Bitcoin Treasury Reserve, get more Bitcoin in people's hands. But we do have the race for Bitcoin treasuries right now, and it's very obvious, and it's picking up speed. And you have Strategy and Michael Saylor over a 500,000 Bitcoin up from the second place spot. In your opinion, do you think that anyone will ever be able to eclipse Strategy, be able to catch up to them? Because if they're just playing the same game as Strategy, are they ever going to be able to catch up? Like, maybe Zuck could take the orange pill tomorrow, and maybe there's like 4 or 5 companies out there that have a chance, but it's probably rare. I just want to know what's your opinion on that.
The,
Is
the
Strategy?
flat answer is no. The more elaborate answer is, even if Saylor only had like 50,000 Bitcoin right now, I'd still bet on him to have the most at the end. Betting against Michael Saylor right now, like, I grew up in Chicago during the Bulls era in the 90s. Dude, betting against Saylor right now is like betting against Michael Jordan. Like, he may not win every time, but you absolutely cannot bet against him. Every time I've questioned him, every time I think, oh my God, look what this idiot's doing now, I catch up 3 months later. I'm like, oh my God, that was brilliant. And so now I'm taking the position that, oh my God, that's brilliant. Figure it out. And I probably started doing that like 2 years ago. But the point is, like, I don't think you can catch Michael Saylor anymore. The first mover advantage is so real. And even as you try to catch him, what are you going to do? You're going to push him further. It's going to be harder and harder for you
Well,
to
I
catch
mean,
him.
even just to say, maybe add him back, 'cause he's got 30,000 Bitcoin. I mean, we there were people who, for sake of argument, Roger Ver once had a lot of Bitcoin. It happens, right? Bitcoin can come and go.
Well, there's a difference between being an individual who's like trying to pitch a shitcoin, and a company that has a mandate to own it in a much more, fiduciary stricken way. I just don't listen. If it happens, I will be really shocked. But I also think about the mechanics of it, right? So if you go buy, I don't know, say you wanted to go buy 200,000 Bitcoin right now, Connor, right? Like, so you buy 200,000 Bitcoin, you're likely to move the price up further, right? And now it becomes even harder to catch Sailor, right? So I think that, and also in terms of like market, just like market dynamics, right? Like, Sailor's a seasoned issuer, right? Like if I go into the public markets right now and try to offer the same things that Sailor's offering, but Sailor's offering the things he's offering, well, who do you think the market's going to respond better to, Connor? And so, listen, there are probably a few corporates, right? There's probably a few sovereigns that might be able to, in one fell swoop, make that sort of a jump to buy
Well, I
50
mean,
or 100
I'm
billion,
not.
but I just don't think I don't think it's something you can do. And I'll explain why, Pete. Like if Facebook right now, if Meta right now were to go and say, hey, we're going to go buy $100 billion worth of Bitcoin, first, the price is going to absolutely skyrocket. But number two, right, their investors are going to be like, what? Right? Like, wait, we're a real company here. We're not a levered Bitcoin entity, right? And so you'd have to basically be abandoning R&D, sales, AI, all the things that have made them a great company to ultimately lever up, abandon every dollar that they're going to put in those things and put it into Bitcoin. Because I don't think being a Bitcoin company, like a levered Bitcoin company, is the same as like owning Bitcoin. Like I think there's a difference between MicroStrategy and what Tesla's done. Tesla owns Bitcoin. They bought some, they've been holding it, they haven't done anything with it. MicroStrategy is doing everything they can to ultimately take leverage to do so. And so I think that distinction is important. But yeah, I think the short answer is no. I don't think anybody catches Sailor.
We got Jimi Hendrix with his hand up here. Jimmy, can you hear us? Jimmy? Looks like we lost him or some sort of Twitter bug.
Well,
Jimmy, if you want to ask your question, feel free to come up. Sorry, Connor.
I just want to follow up. I want Jimmy to go if he can get his mic on, but just following that, say a Microsoft or a Facebook did wally up that $100 billion, it would cause some stir with the maybe investor group. But do you think it would have any damage to the actual company if they did do that? Because I feel like it in the short term it would be a little sketch, but in the long term, I think everyone would figure it out and be like, yeah, that's actually a great idea.
I mean, I think in the long term, it all happens that way, right? I think like every company is a Bitcoin treasury company. I mean, I remember in 2021, I told everyone, hey, in the future, you won't just have a cash flow statement, you'll have a SATS flow statement. And we're already headed in that direction. So yeah, I mean, I guess like here's the deal, right? Like if Meta had a vote on this, right, and I think the vote was 97% no, 3% yes, or something absurd. So I don't even think we should care that much, by the way. Like I don't actually think that matters. Like whether or not Meta owns, Bitcoin now or Google or Netflix or any of the like mags. But I think like the underlying thing is I don't think it's like so not only do I not think like that you can like sort of financially catch Michael Saylor at this point. I don't think there's the will to catch him. It'd always be like, hey, John, do you think that you could catch Usain Bolt? I don't even care to try to catch Usain Bolt, Connor? So I would just be like, I don't think that there's a will. I don't think that there's anybody that's got the same level of like grok and the same juice and the same sort of just like force of will to do what Sailor's doing, man. I really don't.
Well, we've got Jimmy and Bag up here. I just want to throw one more data point as a reminder. You can feel free to come up your request, talk to John, talk to myself. One data point I will say: this time last year, Strategy only had 200,000 Bitcoin. So people have to remember, Michael Saylor has tripled his stack in the last year. So if you're saying, oh well, he can't be caught, I don't know. Interesting data point, right? I mean, 400. Like I think people forget how fast the numbers for Saylor have grown. Jimmy.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I keep getting bounced off, but yeah, I think the key issue is that the LBEs own a money printer, which is a portal between the fiat system and Bitcoin. And the
Awesome.
Elon strikes again.
Why did Elon just buy Clubhouse? It doesn't do this, but everyone's here. It never craps
Uh,
out this way.
yeah, well, because he realized that he could compete, and I think it was Jack, right? I mean, I
Well,
think it
there
wasn't
was a
Jack
fake
still.
offer that they said that they made a $4 billion offer and Clubhouse balked at it, but I actually don't think that was actually the case. I think that story came from Andreessen as they were raising their $100 million is really what I think happened, but I'm not sure. Um, So I don't know if Jimmy's still there, if he's coming back, but I'm going to assume the question sort of is related to the money printer, like between these two, between sort of the arbitrage between, interest rate dollars and buying Bitcoin that's catering higher. And Jimmy, if you just want to DM your question too, if that's easier, feel free to shoot Peter I a DM. But like, I still think that there's competition for that cap. Like I don't think there's an unsatiable amount of demand for Bitcoin treasury exposure. I don't believe that. I believe that the model makes a lot of sense. I believe that buying Bitcoin with 8, 10, 12, 14%, whatever your cost of capital is, while Bitcoin's still catering north of 25, 30%. It's just sensible math, right? Um, I do think you can get blown up in that potentially by going too far on the leverage curve, offering way too onerous of sort of convertible terms, things of that nature, right? Just kind of going further and further out to attract capital can be dangerous. But like I still think the model makes sense. I think what we're seeing is sort of just a shuffling and sort of the market reaching equilibrium. There was a tremendous amount of froth on the back end of May and going into June, but I think where we are now is, more intelligent money, more thoughtful money, basically trying to figure out, okay, who are going to be the winners here? Where do I actually want my capital within this market? I think this is going to be, something I want to invest in, but where within this sort of sector do I invest in? I think that's different than just the overall idea. But I'm assuming that was where you're headed.
I want to make a
We'll check our
follow up
DMs.
with one of the things that you were saying before, John. You were saying like you wouldn't even want to try to race Usain. You wouldn't want to try to outbeat strategy or something like that. I wouldn't doubt some type of black swan event happening like that. Like I don't think 5 years ago anyone had ever heard of OpenAI, and they're probably going to be the most profitable company in the world in a couple of years. And on the same token, I kind of have the mindset of kind of like the Max Kaiser idea of nation states are going to fall away and the Bitcoiners are going to be the eventual rulers. Like Max Kaiser lived in El Salvador, but he probably has more Bitcoin than El Salvador. So he's probably more powerful than El Salvador. And do you think that, like with nation state reserves also in discussions, do you think the United States would ever let a company within the United States own more Bitcoin than the actual country itself? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, yeah, so like when you say the United States government, right? Like you got to keep in mind that's like not a monolith, right? Like they're all fighting in Congress the same things, right? So like I don't think it's that simple. And I don't think that there's like a draconian need, like, there's plenty of people that are way richer than all of the people in Congress, right? I mean, Microsoft is a massive company, Google's a massive company, Amazon's a massive company. All those people have way more money than the president. So I don't think that that's necessarily, an issue. I do think that like, the conversation around, catching, sailor, if you will, sort of independent of that, might be a function of if MicroStrategy somehow fumbles the bag, like. But I think Pete's point's well taken. They've tripled their stack, but I just think like there's this scene from Harry Potter. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I have young kids.
Well, didn't expect you to go
I'm
there.
going Harry Potter, dog. But they go into the like the vault at Gringotts or whatever. Does anybody remember this scene? Pretend like you don't have kids.
Uh,
It's okay.
I'm also a big Harry
All right.
Potter buff,
But do you
so
remember as they
yeah.
touch the gold, more and more gold kind of comes around and it becomes harder and
Uh-huh.
harder and harder. And I think that's ultimately what it's like in a network like Bitcoin because as the demand drives, right, the price is going up higher and higher and higher, and it becomes harder and harder and harder to catch it. And so to me, this is a function of like, increasing speed, right? Like in a rocket, it takes infinitely more energy to continue to propel forward. And so I think that that's where we're at. I don't think that there's going to be an issue with the United States government, and property rights. Like, I think at that point, we basically cease to be the country. Then you would have a tremendous amount of rebellion. I mean, the amount of people that own Bitcoin now in some form or another is into the probably tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people at this point, in some form or another. And so I just don't see that sort like that's not something that like crosses my mind. I don't think that that's like I know that's like libertarian dream, but it's just like I don't think that that's what's happening. I think what you see is the United States government is acquiesced. the United States government has been lobbied by, the president has been elected in part by, right? Like we now have a seat at the table, and we're now telling the United States government what we want to see happen. And I don't think that that power structure like goes down and to the right. I think that continues to go up and to the right. I think Bitcoiners and Bitcoin will be an increasing conversation. It'll have an increasing power pool in Washington, and I think MicroStrategy is going to be, part and parcel part of that. They're going to be one of the biggest companies in the world, and will be impacting politics no different than BlackRock does, and no different than Meta does, and no different than any major company with major lobbying efforts. So I just don't think that that's how it plays out, and I don't think it's what catches or doesn't catch Sailor. But yeah, I mean, like if Saudi Arabia right now, if I don't know, MBS decides that he wants to go buy $100 billion worth of he could pull that off. That would be it. But where I think, and again, I don't want to be too long-winded here, but I think what people fail to understand is the reason why Michael Saylor did what he did is because his company sucked, right? And I don't think Facebook thinks that they suck, right? Like Michael Saylor lost to Bill Gates. Michael Saylor lost to Jeff Bezos and to all the folks that we now know are, the billionaires of today from the tech bubble and tech boom in the early 2000s, right? And so what I think, is sort of helpful for Saylor is that because he realized his company was dying on the vine, he could divert every dollar away from things like MicroStrategy isn't putting a ton of money into R&D to develop better software that no one's going to use in 15 years. Right, like what they're doing is realizing, hey man, we got to just take every effort, we got to take every morsel and put it into Bitcoin. And I don't think Nvidia feels that way. Nvidia's churning billions of dollars. I don't think Meta and Alphabet are looking to throw the white flag in, and I think that would be seen as such, Connor, to a lot of their investors. Like I know we're Bitcoiners, I know we know what we know about Bitcoin, but sometimes I think we underestimate where the world is in relation to its understanding. I mentioned the other day when we passed Amazon in closing that 1% of the world probably understands Bitcoin. It's now the fifth largest asset in the world. 99% of the world understands Amazon, which it's passed. 99% of the world understands Apple. 99% of the world understands what Microsoft does. What happens when 5% of the world wakes up to Bitcoin? Right? It's the biggest asset on the planet. And I think that is a different reckoning. It's different. It's not acquiring shares of MicroStrategy. It's like, and I don't think that I don't think I fully appreciate that, to be honest. I think it's impossible for the human brain to fully appreciate.
All right, winding down here. I do want to make sure we talk about your transition. Thanks, Connor. Jimmy, sorry we didn't get to your question. Do want to talk about the transition with Stacking Sats and what you guys have planned, what's going on, how people can kind of follow what you are up to. So maybe you can give the pitch to the people out here who are, interested in, going along for the ride with a Bitcoin Treasury company that may be on the up and up. I know you guys are out in Canada. It's a little bit of a
No, no,
smaller
no.
guy.
We're actually not. No,
Oh,
we're in
really? Okay.
Chicago. Yeah, we're headquartered in Chicago. We're we serve the contiguous 48, but we also sort of recruit from Canada and do some work in Canada. But no, the majority of the operations are here in the states. But yeah, the in terms of what we're doing next, we're going to continue to grow the company. That's plan one, right? Continue to make sure that we're running a healthy company, and we're going to be looking at targets to take public. We've been looking at various opportunities, and I can't say much about that right now. But I would say that we're looking at a number of different ways to go public. We don't intend to rush that process. We intend to be incredibly diligent. We just wrapped up an equity round we did via Safe. I think I told you a little bit about that, Pete, and we held the spaces a week or two ago, ultimately just sort of announcing all of our intentions. But like what we want to do is we want to keep our options open, and I have fiduciary duty to my investors and shareholders to ultimately maximize that. And so, you mentioned earlier if that means that we're selling to if Jack my neighbor yells across the balcony here and is like, "Hey, John, we're gonna buy Stacking Sats Inc. and we're gonna buy it at 10x its book value right now." I'd probably have to sell the company. um, so I would tell you, we're open to the things that are going to make the best returns for our investors. But I would tell you that the focus for us is that we do think that we would be better served in the public markets. We've done really well raising single digit millions of dollars to buy Bitcoin in our private shell. We're going to continue to take reasonable amounts of debt and leverage to buy as much Bitcoin as we can, and then sweep as much of the rest of that into Bitcoin, which is profits. But really, we're going to look at reverse merger opportunities. We're probably going to avoid the SPAC route. SPACs are really just a real vulturous way to get shares into retail hands, and at the detriment both of retail and the executive team and the actual owners of the stock. And so one of the reasons that we were really focused on allowing just regular non-influencer plebs, just regular stacking, Bitcoin hodlers into our round is, one, we wanted folks that really believed in what we were doing, and we want to get our shares into as much retail hands, so we're not the pump and dump, right? We want people to believe in our company. We want them to know what we're doing. We want them to see that we're growing both top line and bottom line, that we're stacking healthily, that we're taking reasonable amounts of leverage and not putting their capital at risk. Even if that means we end up with slightly less Bitcoin, we know that we can still do really, really well for them and keep that investment safe. And so, but that's the approach that we're going to take. I don't think that we're going to be going public anytime in the next few months. So don't feel like you missed out on this round. We may be doing an intermediary round between now and the time that we go public. And we'll certainly let people know once that happens. But right now, we just raised a bunch of money. We're still buying Bitcoin right now, and we'll be updating everything on the Bitcoin Treasuries .net site. So certainly keep an eye out there. I know there's been a little bit of inaccuracies as we've been getting our page up, but we're buying Bitcoin now. We're going to be continuing to buy Bitcoin, and we're going to go put our heads down right now and get back to work, Pete. The company's still running every day. Framework IT is still out there serving hospitals and law offices and businesses of all types. And next step is for me is we're starting the outreach to acquire other companies and roll them in, expand the cash flow, expand our capacity to be able to buy more Bitcoin. So that's where we're headed next, man.
Yeah, love it, and love your messaging, getting the plebs involved. So, say you're somebody out there with point 0.1 Bitcoin or maybe even less that maybe feels like they're left out on the rest of the treasury movement. How do they get in touch? What should they do? How do people here follow up?
Well, like right now, excuse me, got something in my throat there. Yeah, so right now, we just closed this round, so there really isn't availability to get into the round that we just closed. And it does require that they have to be accredited. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, and some of the yellow belt maxis that been driving me around in Ubers are, trying to make fun. Well, you can't be a pleb and be accredited. And it's like, yeah, you can, bro. It's like 8 Bitcoin. Welcome to $120,000 Bitcoin. So, one, you have to be accredited. Number two, like I said, our round is closed, but I think the best way is just to follow us along. If you go to my page, we have our community on my on our page there. We're gonna be posting all the updates there. We'll be trying to do everything we can to get the message out. I know you and I are working a little bit together to, see if we can find ways to promote, what's going on around the general space. And then just like my life's kind of mission over the last 5 years while being retired has just been talking Bitcoin, investing in Bitcoin companies, things of that nature. And so, yeah, listen, just follow me, follow Stacking Sats Inc. If we open up another round, it still probably will be for accredited investors, and those aren't my rules; those are your government's rules. So don't hate me. But yeah, I mean, the goal is to go public. We want to go public with a healthy company. 99% of the world's capital is there. It allows for us to be more flexible with our acquisition strategy. Allows for us to get a little bit more flexible with copying Sailor's playbook, to where it applies. But yeah, just follow me, follow Stacking Sats Inc. Troll me, do all the fun stuff.
Well, thanks for coming out. Thanks for speaking to the audience. And I got a few updates. But if you want to go check out John's page on Bitcoin treasuries, it is Stacking Sats again, and you can go to Forward IT and find out more about them. Appreciate you guys coming out again. We're got a few announcements I have to rifle off again. We've got a new events page live on the site. So if you have a great event, Bitcoin treasuries event, you want to get it listed there, feel free to reach out. We just added the NYC Bitcoin Treasuries Unconference. Michael Saylor will be there with Tim Kotzman, myself, and a bunch of others. this September, doing some education about what's going on with the Bitcoin treasury movement. If you're confused by any of the metrics or things we discussed, you can head over to our glossary. It's called Learn up in the top nav. Got a bunch of new metrics out there: Bitcoin yield, forward MNAV. If you're confused about any of that stuff, definitely check that out. And if there's ways for us to improve those definitions, as I said, a lot of this stuff is coming in real time. So I appreciate that product feedback as you guys are using the site. So yeah, we'll be back tomorrow with another Spaces. So appreciate everybody coming on. And thanks, John.